The twin moons of Leary hung low in the sky, their pale blue glow spilling over the rust-red surface of Outpost Orin, 3 like milk on copper. The outpost was little more than a scattering of prefab structures bolted into the bones of a former mining operation, abandoned decades ago when the ore ran dry and the corporations lost interest. Now it was a refuge for the unwanted. Forgotten mercs. Drifters. Old exiles who still wore scars they didn't talk about. Joran Havath had been one of the first to set up shop here when the old colony failed. Not because he believed in second chances, but because he no longer had anywhere else to go. His workshop, a half-collapsed freight container welded to a dome of heat glass, stood on the edge of the settlement, a quiet place where machines came to be mended and people came to be left alone. Joran preferred it that way. He spoke in tools more fluently than words. That evening, the hum of the bench stabilizer was the only sound in the shop as Joran leaned over a shattered drone module, magnifying lens strapped across one eye. The cracked circuit lattice shimmered under his torch, delicate as bone. He muttered to himself, adjusting the pulse frequency. The drone was old but salvageable. Just like everything else around here. Then he heard it. Not the usual clang of boots or knock of metal, this was subtler. A high-pitched whine of something unfamiliar powering down. A sound not native to Orin, 3. Joran straightened, setting the tool aside. He reached under the bench and touched the grip of the modified arc blaster stashed there. Just in case. The door buzzed. A soft hiss of airlock decompression. Then the panel slid open and she stepped inside. Or rather, she staggered. The woman was tall, wrapped in armor that shimmered oddly in the low light, curved like flowing glass, with deep channels pulsing a faint, organic violet. Not crafted. Grown. It looked like no tech Joran had ever seen. Her shoulder plating was cracked, one arm limp at her side. Her helmet, split down the middle, had been pushed back, revealing a face that made his breath catch. Pale skin with an opalescent hue, almost translucent. Silver hair, damp with sweat. And eyes, emerald green, ringed with faint starbursts, that did not belong to any human he knew. She swayed. Help, she began, but the word broke in her throat. Joran crossed the distance and caught her as she collapsed, the weight of her armor dragging them both down. She was heavier than she looked. But he didn't let go. He laid her out on the medical bench and stripped away what he could of the armor without damaging it, or her. The suit had sealed around certain areas with bioreactive clamps, almost like tissue. Joran worked slowly, respectfully, until enough was clear to assess the damage. Not just external. Her vitals were erratic. 2 pulses. One slower and steadier than the other. The readings were a mess, nothing his scanner could process correctly. But she was alive. Barely. He patched the fractures he could, sprayed antiseptic over a wound that looked like it had scorched her entire right flank, then hooked her into his shop's limited auto-support system. Nutrient drip. Breather mask. Sleep stabilizer. The helmet, he placed on the counter. For the next 3 hours, he didn't move. Just watched her, trying to make sense of what he'd seen. She wasn't human. Not fully. But not entirely alien either. Her skin wasn't blue or scaled or marked with the distinctive patterns of the Vestral or Uri. She looked, like someone pretending to be human, and almost succeeding. Except for those eyes. She woke with a sharp breath, her hand shooting up to grab his wrist before he could refill the drip. "Easy," he said calmly. "You're safe. You were half dead when you came through my door." Her grip loosened slowly. "Where?" "Orin, 3. Rim Colony. You're in a repair shop, not a prison. I didn't call the authorities, if you were worried." That made her pause. Her gaze flicked around the shop. Shelves full of scavenged tech. Broken drone wings. A modified exosuit core on the far wall. She looked at Joran then, studying him as carefully as he'd studied her. "You fixed me. I stopped you from bleeding out," he said. "Fixing you might take longer." She sat up, groaning slightly as her muscles adjusted. "How long?" "You've been out about 10 hours. Too long." She moved to stand. Joran reached out to steady her, but she waved him off. "You shouldn't be walking around. You're still. I'll manage." That voice. Low. Controlled. But frayed at the edges. Joran folded his arms. "Look, if you're planning to vanish back into the wastelands, be my guest. But I'm guessing whatever did that to your armor is still out there. Maybe give it a day." She looked at him again, slower this time. As if reassessing. Then nodded. "One day." He offered her a cot in the back, just like he'd done a dozen times for travelers passing through. She took it without another word. When the curtain closed behind her, Joran let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The next morning, she was already awake when he entered the workshop. She stood barefoot on the heat tiles, inspecting her cracked breastplate. Her bodysuit, form-fitting and midnight black, clung to her like a second skin. "You didn't say your name," Joran said as he set down a tray with 2 mugs of synth coffee. "I'm Joran Havath." She eyed the coffee. Then him. "Saris," she said. "Saris Alun." He pushed the mug toward her. "So, Saris. Want to tell me who built this armor?" "No." "Fair enough." He lifted the damaged breastplate and turned it over in his hands. Organic infusion in the polymer structure. Neural pathways. And it reconfigures in real time based on your input. Still she said nothing. "I've never seen anything like it," he added. Saris took a sip of the coffee, made a face, but drank more anyway. "You shouldn't have helped me." "Well, you knocked on my door and fell into my arms. Would have made me look heartless to step over you." Her lips twitched. Almost a smile. "Besides," he continued, "if I didn't help every half-dead traveler with strange armor and trust issues, this place wouldn't get much business." She blinked, and this time her smile was real. Brief, but real. "I need to leave tomorrow," she said after a moment. "I'll pay. You don't owe me anything. But, if you have something to barter, I won't say no." She hesitated. Then pulled something from a pouch hidden inside the sleeve of her bodysuit. A crystal chip. About the size of a fingertip. It glowed with a faint pulse, soft violet light like a heartbeat. Joran whistled low. "That's not local." "No. It's mine." He held it up, inspected it. "This is a memory shard, isn't it? From a crystalline core." Saris inclined her head. "Encrypted?" She hesitated. "Yes." He handed it back. "Keep it. It looks important." "I said it's payment." "And I said you should keep it." They stared at each other. Then, quietly, "Why are you really here?" he asked. Saris looked away. Out the glass wall, to the red dust plains beyond. "I'm running," she said softly. "From what?" She didn't answer. That night, they sat together in the silence of the shop. Joran worked on stabilizing the armor's neural threads. Saris watched, her eyes tracking the movement of his hands. "You're different," she said. "How so?" "Most people wouldn't ask questions. Or they'd ask too many. Most people aren't me. You don't seem afraid." "Should I be? I could be dangerous." He met her eyes. "You don't look like someone who wants to hurt anyone. You don't know what I've done." "You're right," he said, voice quiet. "I don't. But I know what I see now." "What's that?" He reached for a damaged circuit, paused, and said simply, "Someone who's tired. Someone who's been alone too long." Saris's breath caught. She looked away, blinking. He didn't press further. Some people were like broken tech, you didn't yank at the wires until you knew what powered them. That night, she slept again in the back. But before she disappeared behind the curtain, she turned to him. Thank you, Joran. Anytime, Saris. When the curtain fell, the silence that followed was full of something new. Not loneliness. Something else. The cot in Joran's back room was stiff, narrow, and smelled faintly of scorched circuitry and machine oil. She'd slept in worse places. Still, as she lay staring at the pitted ceiling with her arm draped across her midsection, where the armor had split and burned her flesh, she found it difficult to rest. Not because of pain. Not anymore. The synth med had numbed her physical injuries. No, this was something older. Deeper. Memories didn't heal as quickly as wounds. The ceiling had a line of rust tracing down one side, forming the vague outline of a crescent. It reminded her of the insignia once sewn into her military jacket. Once. Long ago. Back when she was still High Strategist Alun, heir to the Skyborn Compact. Now she was just Saris. Or pretending to be. She closed her eyes. But sleep, when it finally came, brought no peace. Only fragments. The past didn't care for silence. It arrived in echoes, gunfire in the void, screams filtered through comms, the hiss of oxygen escaping ruptured hulls. And always, at the end of it, the echo of her father's voice. You were born to command, Saris. That means sacrifice. That means knowing who must be left behind. She woke before dawn, soaked in sweat and gasping. Joran didn't ask about the screaming. If he'd heard, he said nothing. He simply passed her a mug of that dreadful, bitter coffee and went back to tinkering with her chest plate like nothing had happened. The courtesy stung more than confrontation would have. She found herself watching him work. The way his brow furrowed in concentration. The steady rhythm of his hands. He didn't treat the armor like a machine, he treated it like a living thing. Like it mattered. It reminded her of her brother. Before the coup. Before the lies and the bloodshed. Before. Is it true you used to fight? She asked suddenly. Joran looked up, surprised. Who told you that? No one. Just, the way you hold tools. Precise. Like a weapons tech. A pause. I fought, yeah, he admitted. 15 years ago. Back when the Confederacy was still holding the outer verge. I signed up to escape something. Turns out war wasn't the way to do it. Was it bad? He didn't answer for a long time. Then, let's just say I learned fixing things felt better than breaking them. Saris nodded, staring at her hands. Her fingers still bore faint calluses where her gauntlets connected. Beneath the skin were implants, subdermal lattices of light and metal that pulsed softly in the quiet of the shop. A symbol of what she had been. What she might still be, if she let herself return. She didn't want to return. Later that day, she offered to help. Your leg's still healing, Joran said. I'm not fragile. No, he agreed, but you're still recovering. Then let me sit. Hold tools. Do something. He didn't argue further. Handed her a coil alignment calibrator and pointed toward a busted atmospheric scrubber pulled in from one of the outer domes. It was tedious work. But familiar. Grounding. They worked together in silence for hours, and it was, almost peaceful. When he accidentally brushed her hand while reaching for a component, she didn't flinch. When he asked her opinion on an override code, she offered one. It worked. That night, they shared a simple meal, Nutriloaf and rehydrated greens. Not much, but it tasted better than rations had in years. Afterward, she surprised herself by saying, "Tell me about this place." Joran blinked. The shop. No. The settlement. The people. Why you stayed. He leaned back, mug in hand, his eyes drifting toward the window where the dust storms were kicking up against the horizon. Orin 3's not special. But it's quiet. No one asks questions. No one cares if you carry scars. You fix things, earn enough to keep the lights on, and maybe, if you're lucky, you find something worth staying for. And have you? The question slipped out before she could pull it back. But it hung there between them, and Joran didn't shy from it. He looked at her directly. Maybe. That night, she couldn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't the memories that kept her awake. It was the way Joran had looked at her when he said maybe. Not like she was a refugee. Not like she was a soldier. Or a threat. Or something alien. He looked at her like she was real. Human. She hadn't been looked at that way in a very, very long time. The next morning, she found him already at work before sunrise. He'd stripped the chest plate of her armor and was carefully reinforcing the neural relays. The gesture was so precise, so focused, that she felt something twist in her chest. A kind of grief for something she hadn't realized she'd lost. You know, she said quietly, this armor was grown on Astra 9. Each suit bonded to the pilot during adolescence. It adapts to our neural patterns. Learns our reactions. It's more than tech. It's memory. A living archive of who we are. Joran glanced up. And this one's yours? She nodded. Since I was 13. He set the tools down. Then I'll make sure it's whole again. And that was when she knew. He wasn't fixing her armor. He was fixing her. She kissed him that evening. Not out of desperation. Or loneliness. But because it felt inevitable. They were locking the workshop for the night. She turned, meaning to thank him again. And he was just, standing there. Hands in his coat pockets. Smudged with oil. Looking at her like the galaxy wasn't so wide after all. I should be gone already, she whispered. I know. But I don't want to leave. He didn't say anything. So she stepped forward. And kissed him. It was soft. Uncertain. Not a warrior's kiss. Not a queen's. Just a woman and a man trying to find something solid in the wreckage of their pasts. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. You don't have to run forever, he said quietly. And she wished with everything in her heart that it could be true. But Saris Alun had learned long ago, every truth has its cost. The next morning, the sky over Orin 3 was filled with ash. The problem with silence in deep space wasn't its emptiness. It was what it let you hear. Alaric Thorne sat in the command chair of the Virili, staring through the curved viewport at the planet below, Orin 3, a useless stretch of red dust and broken rock orbiting a half-dead star. Not worth conquering. Not worth remembering. And yet, here he was. Again. 6 years ago, he would have called Saris Alun sister-in-arms. Maybe even friend. Before the compact fractured. Before she disappeared. Before she betrayed everything they built. And now she was down there, hiding in a mechanic's junk heap. Alaric tapped the encrypted datapad in his palm. The intel was solid. She'd arrived wearing a disguised signature suit, bleeding and limping, in a ship that burned half its energy core on entry. One mechanic. No security. No backup. No empire behind her. She was vulnerable. And that made her dangerous. The door to the command deck slid open behind him. We're ready, said one of his officers. A kid named Darren. Too young to know the history. Too naive to understand what Saris Alun had once been, and what she still could become. Keep the landing party small, Alaric said. No armor. No insignia. This isn't a war zone, yet. Yes, sir. He stood and straightened his jacket, eyes still on the crimson clouds swirling below. She won't expect me. That was the hope. And if she did? He reached for the blade clipped to his belt. He would do what needed to be done. The dropship touched down on the edge of the outpost just as the sun cracked the horizon. Orin 3 looked the same as it had during the insurgencies. Dead. Dry. Smelling faintly of scorched minerals and recycled oxygen. The kind of place that devoured idealism. His boots crunched on the sand. Around him, the outpost was still waking, lights flickering on in the prefab homes, machinery groaning to life. He didn't need a scan to locate the workshop. The power readings were distinct. Controlled. Balanced in a way only someone like Saris would allow. She was inside. He approached slowly. No weapons drawn. No threats made. Just enough presence to say, "I'm not afraid. But I came prepared." The door buzzed. Opened. And there she was. Her hair was pulled back, silver strands caught in the early morning light. She wore a dark thermal shirt, sleeves rolled, the trace of her old armor still visible in the interface marks along her arms. Beside her stood a man. Older than Alaric, maybe. Lean. Wary. This had to be the mechanic. Joran. Alaric's stomach twisted. Not with jealousy. With something colder. She's bonded to him. He could see it in the way her body shifted subtly toward Joran. The way her eyes narrowed in silent warning. "Saris," Alaric said softly. "You're hard to find." Not hard enough, apparently. She didn't move. Neither did Joran. Alaric gave a slow, deliberate nod. "You left a wake behind you. Powerful people noticed. I stopped being one of those people." "No, Saris. You stopped acting like one. There's a difference." She stepped forward, shielding Joran without saying a word. Alaric's gaze shifted to the mechanic. "You know who she is?" Joran's jaw tightened. "I know enough. You know she commanded fleets. That her word could move entire systems into war. She's not that person anymore." Alaric sighed. "You think hiding on a rock like this erases what she's done? The people she left behind? The ones who died when she disappeared?" Saris' voice was a blade. "You came to kill me, didn't you?" "No. I came to bring you back." A pause. "Or make sure you don't fall into the wrong hands." "I'm in no one's hands now." "That's not true," Alaric said, eyes flicking again to Joran. "And you know it." Inside the workshop, the three of them sat around the fabrication table. Tension hummed like an overcharged power cell. Saris didn't drink the water Joran offered. Alaric did. "Let me explain," he began. "The compact's remnants have reformed. The outer systems are realigning. The consortium is expanding again. And they want you, alive or dead. Preferably alive. As a symbol. I'm done being a symbol. You don't get to decide that. Not anymore." She laughed, a hollow, brittle sound. "That's the thing about power, Alaric. The moment you stop wanting it, someone else tries to shove it back in your hands." "And what about the rest of us?" he asked. "The ones still fighting? Still bleeding for something you walked away from?" "I didn't walk away," she snapped. "I ran. Because staying would have killed more people than it saved." Joran leaned forward, finally speaking. "You're not explaining anything. Just threatening." "I'm warning you," Alaric said calmly. "Because this planet won't protect her. Not from what's coming." "Then what do you want?" Alaric turned to Saris. "I want you to come with me. We'll get you to safety. Figure out a way forward. There are still loyalists. You can take back what's yours. I don't want it anymore." I don't believe you. He stood. Slowly. Think about it. You think you're free now, hiding here. But they'll find you eventually. And when they do, it won't be me knocking on your door. It'll be someone who doesn't care about your past, or your pain, or who you love. He glanced at Joran. Then back at her. And you'll lose everything again. They left in silence. Alaric didn't press. He knew the seed had been planted. As he stepped back onto the dropship, he looked once more at the distant workshop. Saris Alun was broken. But she wasn't finished. And the galaxy? It was hungrier than ever. That night, as the Virili lifted off into orbit, Alaric recorded a single encrypted message. She's still alive. But not for long. They'll come for her soon. One way or another, this ends. He didn't say how he felt about that. Because he didn't know. They sent Marin to kill her. Not with a weapon. Not in the literal sense. No, the request was far more elegant than that. Assassins make headlines. Diplomats make regimes disappear quietly. The encrypted order had been delivered by an AI courier whose voice sounded like Marin's late brother. Personal touches were the signature of the Confederation's intelligence branch. Ensure the Saris variable does not destabilize the compact. That was all. Not arrest. Not negotiate. Ensure. It meant, if she rises, bury her. If she hesitates, replace her. If she runs, let her vanish, but make sure she never returns. Marin Vale had walked into palaces and prison blocks wearing the same face. Pale-eyed, copper-skinned, always quiet. She never needed to raise her voice. People listened anyway. Because when Marin spoke, they heard the subtle hum of threat beneath diplomacy. She didn't bark. She whispered, and entire civilizations changed course. And now, she stood in a dingy cantina on Orin 3, sipping something that passed for tea and watching a man named Joran Havath patch a rusting power conduit just outside the window. The woman she was here for, Saris Alun, was seated in the far corner of the room, back to the wall, hood up, eyes constantly scanning the exits. Not the behavior of an empress. The behavior of someone used to being hunted. Good. That would make this easier. She approached quietly. No weapons. Just presence. Saris's eyes found her before she reached the table. Vale, she said, voice low and flat. You still remember my name. Hard to forget the diplomat who negotiated the armistice that got half my fleet decommissioned. Diplomacy is compromise, Marin said calmly. And you walked out of that agreement alive. Which is more than I can say for others. Saris said nothing. Marin sat without invitation. They stared at each other for a moment, two ghosts in borrowed flesh. I'm not here to make war, Marin said. Then why are you here? Because they're afraid of you, Saris. And when people in power are afraid, they get reckless. You've heard the stories. Systems collapsing. Trade routes falling silent. Entire sectors siding with the consortium just to stay fed. Saris's eyes were tired. You think I can fix that? I think they think you can. And what do you think? Marin folded her hands. I think if you take a side, any side, it'll break the galaxy in half. They talked for hours. About nothing. About everything. About the war that never ended. About the rebellion Saris once led, and the blood on both their hands. Marin found herself surprised by the softness beneath Saris's walls. Not weakness. Not fragility. Something else. Something human. And then she saw him. Joran. Watching them. His face unreadable. When Saris turned to glance over her shoulder, her expression shifted. Wariness gave way to warmth. She loves him, Marin thought, shocked by the clarity of the realization. Not the forced affection of political marriages. Not the fierce loyalty of battle-forged bonds. Something gentler. Something dangerous. Because love makes you hesitate. And hesitation gets people killed. Later, alone in her temporary quarters, Marin opened her comms channel. A voice greeted her. The handler. No name. No face. Report, it said. She's alive. Is she a threat? Marin hesitated. She doesn't want power. She wants peace. Do you believe that? Another silence. She's not who she was. Then eliminate her. The command came like a slap. Marin's jaw clenched. That won't be necessary. You disagree with your directive? I'm updating it, Marin said coolly. She's under surveillance. If she acts, I'll act. A pause. Then, we expect results. Marin cut the connection. Then she sat back. And for the first time in years, she questioned the orders she'd followed her entire life. The next morning, she walked the long curve of Oren's eastern ridge. She found Joran there, watching the sky. They'll come for her, he said without looking at her. Yes, Marin agreed. You gonna stop them? That depends. On what? On whether she stays Ceres, or becomes what they remember. He turned to her then, his gaze sharp. She's not the woman they want her to be. Not anymore. And if she has to become that woman to protect you? Joran's jaw clenched. I didn't ask for protection. I just want her safe. That's not the same thing. He didn't respond. Marin studied him for a long moment. You love her. Yeah. That'll get you killed. Maybe. But it won't make me wrong. Marin made her decision that night. She deleted the encryption key. Burned the only copy of the kill order. And for the first time since she was a girl, she left a door open instead of locking it. Let the galaxy burn, she thought. But let them burn it together.